Can there be more than one solid phase for a given substance?
Yes, solids can adopt different types of microscopic arrangements. If there is a repeating pattern to the atoms in a solid, it is called a crystal. If the ordered structure exists for the entire material, then the phase is known as a single crystal. Think of a diamond. If a sample is a bunch of individual crystals, then we refer to the material as polycrystalline. Lots of solids also just have no pattern to the arrangement of their atoms. And this class is known as amorphous.
What is a free radical?
A free radical is an atom or molecule that contains unpaired electrons in one, or more, of its orbitals. Typically these species will be highly reactive as the unpaired electron, s, can pair with other electrons in a favorable manner. Radical species can have any charge or be neutral.
Why did Aaron C. Chanover, Israel, Avram Hershko, Israel, and Erwin Rose, United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For the discovery of ubiquitin-mediated protein degradation. While the overwhelming majority of biochemical research on proteins has focused on how they are synthesized and how they function, these three researchers took a unique path and studied how cells regulate their breakdown. They discovered that proteins are broken down and rebuilt at a much faster rate than anyone probably would have expected. Proteins are labeled when it is time for them to be broken down. And then they are chopped up into small pieces so that they no longer function.
Why did Richard F. Heck, United States, Eiichi Negishi, Japan, and Akira Suzuki, Japan, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For palladium-catalyzed cross-couplings in organic synthesis. Heck, Negishi, and Suzuki shared this prize for their development of a class of reactions called palladium-catalyzed cross-couplings. These reactions are a powerful tool in organic synthesis, allowing chemists to form carbon-carbon bonds, which is generally not an easy task at all. The reaction is accomplished by having the carbon atoms first join to a common palladium center, from which point carbon-carbon bond formation can proceed.
Why did Robert Bruce Merrifield, United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For his development of methodology for chemical synthesis on a solid matrix. Merrifield developed a simple and very clever way of synthesizing peptides or chains of nucleic acids. The method involves binding the first of the chain of, let's say, amino acids to a polymer. The subsequent residues can then be added synthetically. And this approach turns out to be faster and yield larger quantities of the desired final product than earlier methods.
What are the potential dangers of nuclear energy?
The main risks associated with nuclear energy have to do with health hazards of radiation poisoning. This isn't the same type of radiation we're talking about with light and microwaves. That type is electromagnetic radiation. The radiation associated with nuclear energy involves subatomic particles, like neutrons, given off from nuclear decay processes. Exposure to this type of radiation can cause cancer or genetic defects, among other problems. Since the fission processes used to generate energy are normally well controlled. Though, nuclear energy is generally one of the cleanest energy sources available. Nuclear reactors only become dangerous in the event of a meltdown or other disaster. But the chances of these happening are extremely small. Modern nuclear power plants are built with a series of fail-safes such that a series of multiple, extremely unlikely events would have to happen, one after another, for a meltdown to occur.
So why do opposite ends of magnets attract or repel one another?
Remember that real-world magnets are ferromagnetic substances. They have a net overall spin. Again, this is a quantum mechanical spin, but it's okay to think of it as spin up or down. In a ferromagnet, all of these spins are pointing in the same direction. If you put the up ends of a magnet together, they will repel. The magnetic fields are pushing in opposite directions. If you put an up end next to a down end, they will attract. The magnetic fields are working in the same direction. Just like the electron spins are aligned within the magnet.
What makes string cheese stringy?
In the United States, string cheese is usually mozzarella, sometimes with some cheddar thrown in. The production process takes melted cheese and stretches and folds it in a single direction. This stretching aligns the proteins in the cheese, making it possible to peel off long strings of it.
Lipscomb, United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For his studies on the structure of boranes illuminating problems of chemical bonding. Boron hydride, borane, complexes participate in many interesting examples of chemical bonding. And this is due to the fact that boron possesses one less electron than carbon to donate to chemical bonds. but still often forms 4 coordinate complexes. Lipscomb won the prize for his pioneering explorations of the chemistry and bonding in borane complexes using X-ray diffraction and quantum chemical calculations. He reached a level of understanding of borane complexes at which he could predict the properties and reactivity of borane complexes reasonably well. And his work led to deeper insight into the nature of the chemical bond.
What is a neutron?
An unchanged charged, subatomic particle found in the nucleus of an atom.
Does all the alcohol really boil off when I cook with wine?
Not really, no. It's common lore that when you add red wine to pasta sauce that the alcohol evaporates rather quickly. This idea is supported by the fact that alcohol has a lower boiling point than water, so it should evaporate quickly. People who actually studied this, however, have shown that even after an hour, 25% of the alcohol you added is still in the sauce. If you want a truly non-alcoholic marinara, you need to simmer for at least 2.5 hours.
Is sodium lauryl sulfate toxic?
You're probably asking this because you've seen this chemical listed on your shampoo or toothpaste, and at the levels in those products. No, it is not toxic. This molecule is a surfactant, very similar to many soaps. And like most soaps, if you get them in your eyes, it hurts. The chemical is an irritant, but it does not cause cancer, like you might have heard.
What is infrared?
Electromagnetic radiation with wavelengths of 750 nanometers to 1 millimeter. Just longer than the visible spectrum, but not as long as microwave radiation.
What is a Gaussian distribution?
A Gaussian distribution is a type of probability distribution that characterizes the distribution of a randomly distributed variable about a single mean, average, value. This is the most commonly encountered type of distribution in statistical analysis. So it is good to be at least a little familiar with it.
Why is diamond so hard?
Pure diamond is a crystalline form of only carbon atoms. The crystal lattice is three-dimensional. and all carbon atoms are attached to 4 other carbon atoms in a perfect tetrahedral geometry. Because the lattice repeats in all 3 dimensions, there is no easy way to distort the structure, making it a very hard material. The structure of graphite, for comparison, is many stacked up layers of carbon atoms. These 2-dimensional sheets can slide relative to one another, making graphite relatively soft in comparison to diamond.
What is anhydrous?
Without water.
What are green chemical products?
Green chemical products are products that were designed with the principles of green chemistry in mind so that they will not have harmful effects on human or animal health or on other aspects of the environment. Since the advent of green chemistry, a tremendous number of green products have been developed, ranging from safer household paints to greener cleaning products to new types of plastic products. You may have heard the phrase benign by design, which is often used to describe such products.
What is a semi-metal?
An element, compound, or alloy that has metallic and nonmetallic properties, also known as metalloid.
What is thermite?
Thermite is a mixture of a metal powder and a metal oxide that is capable of causing a very strong exothermic reaction. Different metals can be used, but the most common mixture is iron oxide, Fe2O3, and aluminum, Al, powder. The mixture is stable at room temperature, but when it is ignited, it burns in an incredibly exothermic reaction, releasing a lot of heat.
What is an independent variable?
A variable that is set to a specific, known value in an experiment.
What is a renewable energy source?
A renewable energy source is one that is provided by resources that are continuously replenished or which will always be available during the foreseeable future of the planet.
What is an addition reaction?
In an addition reaction, 2 or more molecules combine to make one molecule. This is different than the substitution reactions we have been looking at, where 2 molecules combine to make 2 different molecules. The addition of an acid to an alkene is the simplest example. Here, an acid protonates a carbon-carbon double bond. The carbocation that is formed will be the more substituted one of the possible products that could form. The conjugate base of the acid then reacts with this carbocation.
What is a bond strength?
A measure of the energy required to break a chemical bond.
How do painkillers know what part of the body to target? Or phrased another way, why doesn't your whole body get a little numb when you take a painkiller?
Let's limit this discussion to what are called nonsteroidal drugs, like ibuprofen. Ibuprofen, and other drugs like it, work by interrupting the series of signals that your body uses to communicate pain to your brain. The COX, cyclooxygenase, family of enzymes play an important, but intermediate, role in this pathway. This means that the COX enzymes take one type of signal and convert it into another that your body recognizes as pain. By working on an intermediate messenger, ibuprofen only takes effect where the pain is occurring. That first signal has to already be there, so your whole body doesn't get numb when you take ibuprofen.
What elements are in our food?
Our food is made up of pretty much the same elements that we are. Which makes sense because at some point, the elements in our food literally become the elements in our bodies. We are what we eat.
Why did Manfred Eigen, Federal Republic of Germany, Ronald George Rayford Norrish, United Kingdom, and George Porter, United Kingdom, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For their studies of extremely fast chemical reactions effected by disturbing the equilibrium by means of very short pulses of energy. Norrish and Porter were credited with the prize for their development of flash photolysis methods, which applied short pulses of light to initiate photochemical reactions, allowing them to study very fast chemical reactions that could not previously be observed. Eigen's work differed in that he used sound as his form of energy to probe the chemical reactions, which is far less invasive of an approach in the sense that sound does not cause drastic changes in the behavior of the molecules being studied. Of the two methods, the flash photolysis method is much more akin to the modern spectroscopic approaches used today, while sound-based approaches did not gain as much traction.
How did chemistry affect trade in ancient times?
Ancient chemistry was involved in the production of many goods that were important to trade. These included salt, silk, linen dyes, precious metals, wine, and pottery.
Why did Robert J. Lefkowitz and Brian K. Kobilka, both United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For studies of protein-coupled receptors. Lefkowitz and Kobilka shared this prize for their work. Studying a class of receptors called G-protein-coupled receptors. These play a role in how cells sense their environment, and especially in how cells respond to medicines, hormones, and other signaling molecules. Lefkowitz had been working in this area since the late 1960s, and Kobilka since the 1980s. But it wasn't until 2011 that they were able to get an image of the receptor at the exact moment that a hormone activates its signaling mechanism. The prize was awarded for their collective body of work elucidating how these receptors function.
What is the structure of diamond?
Diamond has a repeating structure of carbon atoms in which all the atoms are bonded to 4 others in a tetrahedral geometry. It's easiest to see if we first look at the structure of cyclohexane. A ring, cyclo, of 6 carbon atoms, hex, with no double bonds, ana. If we repeat the structure of cyclohexane over and over, we arrive at the structure for diamond.
What is the role of the EPA in promoting green chemistry?
The United States EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, has taken great efforts to promote green chemistry. The EPA offers numerous scholarships and awards to promote awareness of green chemistry and the observation of green principles in the chemical industry. It also undertakes efforts to educate the public on green chemistry and, more generally, on the effects of chemical products on human health and on the environment. The EPA also funds research on sustainable technologies and small business innovation, as well as the American Chemical Society Green Chemistry Institute, which promotes partnerships with chemical industry.
How can I make a cloud form in a bottle?
Note, this experiment involves fire and flammable materials. Adult supervision is a must. Chemistry principles encountered in this experiment: ideal gas law, phase changes, droplet formation, materials you'll need: 20-ounce or 1-liter plastic soda bottle, warm water, 1 to 2 ounces. Matches the procedure. Add warm water to the soda bottle until the bottom is just barely covered with water. With the bottle tipped so that you don't burn yourself. Ignite a match and insert the burning end of the match into the bottle. Allow the bottle to fill up with smoke. When the bottle is fairly filled with smoke, or when the match goes out, remove the match and screw the cap on to close the bottle. Clouds will form when water vapor forms small but visible droplets around particles in the air. In this experiment, the smoke will provide these particles around which the water can form small droplets. With the bottle closed, squeeze it several times. You should see a cloud form when you squeeze the bottle. The temperature of the gas inside may temporarily increase, but the temperature will quickly equilibrate with the surroundings. Recall the ideal gas law we discussed in Atoms and Molecules, PV equals NKBT. When you release the squeezed bottle, the temperature inside decreases, cooling the water vapor and helping it to liquefy into droplets on the particles provided by the smoke. This is very similar to how real clouds are formed in the atmosphere.
Why are lasers useful for physical chemists?
Chemists use lasers to study how molecules interact with light. In some cases, a chemist may want to know how a molecule reacts when a pulse of light is used to excite it. In other cases, lasers can be used to gain information about the structure of the molecule. One of the reasons lasers are good for these purposes is that they can provide pulsed light to gain information about how molecules are changing over time. Another is that many tricks exist for controlling and manipulating the wavelength of the light produced by a laser, making them versatile light sources.
How is the concentration of a solution defined?
The concentration of a substance is the amount of that substance in a solution divided by the volume of the solution. Chemists typically use molar concentration, moles of material/volume.
How do instant noodles cook so fast?
Because they're already cooked. Instant noodles were invented in Japan in the year 1958 by Momofuku Ando, who was working at Nissin Foods. The noodles are flash fried, creating a dry noodle with a very long shelf life that can be prepared in minutes.
Why does bleach kill everything?
The active ingredient in bleach, sodium hypochlorite, NaOCl, has a few ways of killing off microbes. One method involves causing particular proteins in the microbes to unfold, preventing their normal function and eventually killing the bacteria. Alternatively, bleach can disrupt the membrane that forms the outer shell of a bacteria. Since most bacterial membranes are very similar, bleach is very effective against a whole host of different types of bacteria. The human body actually produces hypochlorous acid, HOCl, itself to combat bacterial infections.
What is an ideal solution?
An ideal solution describes a solution of dilute solute particles that do not interact with one another. It is very similar to an ideal gas, except that instead of empty space occupying the space between the gas particles, a weakly interacting solvent occupies the space between solute particles.
What is an excited state?
An atom or molecule in any electronic state of higher energy than its lowest energy state.
What is a nonmetal?
An element that does not possess the properties of a metal.
When I get an MRI, what is the machine actually measuring?
An MRI is basically just performing an NMR measurement on the hydrogen atoms in your body. Similar to an NMR instrument, an MRI instrument uses a large magnet and a radio frequency pulse to generate a rotating net magnetization in the hydrogen atoms in your body. The resulting magnetization generates an electric current in a receiver in the MRI instrument that can be processed to generate an image of what's going on inside your body.
What metal is at work in alcohol dehydrogenase in your liver?
The active site of alcohol dehydrogenase contains a zinc center that is responsible for catalyzing the reaction of ethanol to acetaldehyde.
What is radioactive?
Emission of radiation or particles.
Why is graphite so good to write with?
Graphite is an attractive chemical for writing for a few reasons. Graphite, unlike most inks, is not dissolved by water or affected by moisture, but it's easy to erase. Fun fact, we commonly refer to the graphite in pencils as pencil lead, but there's no lead, PB, in there. The Romans did use lead for writing, but the practice didn't make it much farther in history than that. The paint on the outside of pencils did, however, contain lead up through the 1900s.
What fraction of the oxygen on Earth is produced by the Amazon rainforest?
It is estimated that about 20% of the diatomic oxygen, O2, on Earth at a given time was produced by the Amazon rainforest.
What is a stereoisomer?
Molecules that differ only in the spatial arrangement of their atoms.
What chemical process leads to the formation of fossils?
There are of course many different types of fossils, but most form through some sort of mineralization process. What's that? In water that has lots of dissolved minerals, after an organism dies. Those minerals can slowly deposit in the tiniest of spaces within that organism, even within cell walls. Well-preserved fossils require the organism to be covered with sediment quickly after death. Like on the bottom of a lake, so that the body doesn't decay before the slower mineralization process can take place.
What is the ideal gas law?
An equation that approximates the properties of gases, commonly written as PV equals nRT, where P equals pressure, V equals volume, N equals number of moles, R equals gas constant, T equals temperature.
How large is an atom relative to things we can see?
The smallest object a human eye can see is approximately 0.1 millimeters, or 10 to 4 m. Atoms have sizes on the order of 10 to 10 m, or approximately 1 million times smaller than something the human eye can possibly see.
Why did Venkatraman Ramakrishnan, United States, Thomas A. Stites, United States, and Ada Ionath, Israel, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For studies of the structure and function of the ribosome. Ramakrishnan, Stites, and Ionath are responsible for uncovering the structure and function of the ribosome at the atomic level, and it is for that work that they share this Nobel Prize. They used X-ray crystallography to individually map each atom that makes up the ribosome. It consists of hundreds of thousands of atoms. The ribosome plays a crucial role in each cell, as it is responsible for the synthesis of proteins. On the basis of their results, these researchers have also developed models showing how antibiotics bind to the ribosome.
But what if you were to put a catalyst for gas release into a bottle of Diet Coke, R?
That's exactly what a Mentos, R, does. Dissolved gases need a surface to start forming a bubble, let's just assume that's true, which it is. And the Mentos, R, candy provides a huge amount of surface area because it is a very porous material. So add a Mentos, R, and many more CO2 bubbles can form at the same time, which leads to a sugary eruption.
What is ADP?
ADP, or adenosine triphosphate, is a molecule used as a source of energy in the body. The energy of an ADP molecule is stored in its chemical bonds, and it is released through hydrolysis of phosphate groups to form ADP, adenosine diphosphate. The ADP in our bodies is continuously recycled, and on average, each ADP molecule in our body will be used and regenerated over 1,000 times each day.
You might ask then, what is this trans fat everyone talks about in foods?
First, we should point out that most of the double bonds in unsaturated fats are in the cis conformation, where both carbon substituents are on the same side, in nature. Trans fats are fats that have had hydrogen artificially added, which can result in unsaturated fats with a trans conformation about the double bond. There is evidence that these trans fats can be more harmful to your health than other fats.
What is magnetic permeability?
The magnetic permeability of a material describes the extent to which it is able to support a magnetic field inside itself. It describes the amount of magnetization that takes place in a material when an external magnetic field is applied. Materials with a high magnetic permeability are able to support a stronger magnetic field within themselves.
How can I make a pH indicator at home?
Chemistry principles encountered in this experiment: extract ions, acid/base chemistry, chemical indicators, solubility and temperature. Materials you'll need: several leaves of red cabbage, blender 1 coffee filter, large jar, glasses or clear cups, water, stovetop or microwave pot or pan. You only need some, not necessarily all, of the following ingredients: baking soda, 1 to 2 teaspoon, lemon juice, 1 to 2 teaspoon, vinegar, 1 to 2 teaspoon, ammonia, 1 ounce of household variety like what you use for cleaning, antacids, 1 tablet, Alka-Seltzer, R, works. The procedure: Cut about 2 cups of cabbage and place it in a blender. Boil water in a pot, and then add boiling water to the cabbage in the blender. Turn on the blender and blend for about 10 minutes. The hot water will extract a pigment called an anthocyanin from the red cabbage, along with other components. Recall that solubility tends to increase at higher temperatures. Anthocyanins are molecules that will change color depending on the pH of the solution. This will serve as our indicator. Filter the plant material out by pouring the solution through a coffee filter and into a large jar. The liquid you obtain should be red/blue/purple in appearance. The exact color you observe will depend on the pH of the water you are looking at, which may be influenced by factors like the ion concentration in your tap water and the other plant components that remain in the solution. Pour the solution into various glasses or clear cups. These will be your individual test beakers where you can test the pH of various substances. Try adding other substances to your solutions and observe how the color changes as they are added. Note that the amount of solution you add to each glass/cup will influence the amount of each test substance, e.g. lemon juice, you need to add to see a color change. For reference, the list below tells you how the color of your anthocyanin indicator solution should change with pH. Approximate pH color: 2 red, 4 purple, 6 violet, 8 blue, 10 blue, green, 12 yellow, green.
What is a chemical indicator?
As we mentioned, for a titration to be successful there must be some indication of when it has finished. Chemical indicators are a common way of determining whether a titration is complete. In acid-base titrations, chemical indicators are typically small molecules whose colors change depending on the pH of the solution, or, in other words, on their protonation state. In other cases, the indicator may change color based on whether it is coordinated to another species in a solution. It is also possible to use a device like a pH-sensitive electrode to determine when the titration has ended. This doesn't rely on you, or another person, being able to notice a visible change in the color of the solution. Such a device can be more accurate, since it doesn't rely on a qualitative interpretation of a color change.
Why did Hermann Staudinger, Federal Republic of Germany, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For his discoveries in the field of macromolecular chemistry. Staudinger was among the first to propose that macromolecules, polymers, are of significant importance and play an important role in chemistry. These views were not initially well received by many members of his field, but he was able to demonstrate experimental proof of the existence of macromolecules. Today the importance of macromolecules is widely recognized in polymer chemistry, biochemistry, and numerous other fields.
What is a calorie?
A calorie is a unit of heat energy defined as the amount of energy it takes to raise 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Calories are also often used to describe the energy content of foods. When used for foods, a calorie actually refers to 1000 calories, or a kilocalorie of energy, which can be rather confusing.
What is a congener?
A polymer of 2 or more monomers.
What is an organic compound?
Any molecule, or compound, that contains carbon atoms is referred to as organic. The usage of this term is a bit arbitrary, though, as some forms of carbon, like graphite and diamond, and carbon-containing ions, like formate and carbonate, are not thought of by chemists as organic molecules.
What is saponification?
Technically the hydrolysis of triglycerides, i.e., triesters, with sodium hydroxide, more generally refers to hydrolysis of any ester.
Where was early chemistry developed?
While many civilizations learned how to make dyes and pigments, or ferment fruit into wine. The earliest theories about atoms and what makes up the chemical world came from ancient Greece and India. Leucippus in Greece and Kanada in India both came up with the idea that there must be a small, indivisible part of matter. The Greek word for uncuttable is atomus, clearly the root of the modern term atom. Kanada's term for this similar concept was paramanu or simply anu, the indivisible element of matter.
How does sunscreen work?
Sunscreens either reflect or absorb ultraviolet light from the sun. To reflect the light, sunscreens contain either titanium or zinc oxides, which are both very white solids, so all wavelengths of visible light are being reflected. To absorb light, sunscreens can contain organic chemicals that interact with harmful UV wavelengths. While almost all sunscreens use titanium and/or zinc oxides, the particular organic compounds that are used vary widely across brands and countries.
What is a unimolecular reaction?
A unimolecular reaction involves only a single reactant molecule undergoing a chemical reaction to form products. One possible outcome is that the bonds rearrange within a single molecule to form only one product molecule, while another possibility is that the reactant molecule will fragment, producing multiple product molecules.
What makes hot peppers so spicy?
The molecule that makes hot peppers so spicy is called capsaicin, see its chemical structure below. This molecule behaves as an irritant to humans and other mammals. But some of us still really like its flavor.
What is radon?
Radon is an element that is widely known for its potential to cause cancer. It is the heaviest gas known to man, with a density roughly 9 times greater than that of air. It is usually found in soil and rocks, though it can also be found in water. Fortunately, radon detectors are commonly available that allow you to test your home for elevated radon levels.
What is an equilibrium?
A state in which a chemical reaction and its reverse are proceeding at equal rates.
What is a heteroatom?
Any atom other than carbon or hydrogen.
Why did Richard R. Ernst, Switzerland, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For his contributions to the development of the methodology of high-resolution nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, spectroscopy. Nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR. Spectroscopy has proven to be a powerful tool for physical and synthetic chemists alike. It has been used to characterize the structures of simple organic complexes, complex biomolecules, and to dynamically track the progress of chemical reactions, among other applications. Ernst won the prize for his substantial contributions to increasing the sensitivity and resolution of NMR instruments. Ernst contributed to improving a wide variety of aspects of NMR spectroscopy, including both ONI and two-dimensional approaches. And he also proposed a method for obtaining NMR tomographic images, which was eventually realized.
What is the Grignard reaction?
The Grignard reaction is one of the most well-known and powerful reactions in organometallic synthesis. Primarily due to its ability to readily form new carbon-carbon bonds. In this reaction, a Grignard reagent reacts by adding to a carbonyl functional group of an aldehyde or ketone and forms a new carbon-carbon bond at the carbonyl carbon. Grignard reagents, which are organometallic species that carry out the Grignard reaction, are typically formed by adding magnesium metal to an alkyl or aryl halide, R1Br in the scheme below. The discovery of this important reaction was awarded with the Nobel Prize in 1912, and the reaction is actually also named after the French chemist François-Auguste Victor Grignard, who discovered it.
What is a phosphodiester bond?
Phosphodiester bonds are what make up the backbone of DNA and RNA molecules. These bonds provide the linkage that holds together the individual nucleotides or nucleosides in DNA and RNA. Enzymes called polymerases catalyze their formation, DNA polymerases for DNA and RNA polymerases for RNA. Take a look at the picture below to see the chemical structure of a phosphodiester bond.
What is combustion?
A chemical reaction between a fuel and an oxidant to produce heat.
What causes smog?
Smog is caused by chemical reactions involving volatile organic chemicals and nitrogen oxides that take place in the presence of sunlight. These pollutants can come from a variety of sources. But in urban areas, a large quantity usually comes from motor vehicles. These are the reasons that smog often becomes a bigger problem when there is heavy traffic and lots of sunlight.
Why are scientists so interested in semiconductors?
Recall that semiconductors are a class of materials defined by their conductivity properties. Specifically, they have intermediate conductivity properties between those of things that conduct extremely well, like metals, and things that don't tend to conduct well at all, insulators. This is what makes them so useful. Scientists are able to use semiconductors to control the flow of electricity in circuits, which has been crucial for the development of all of the complicated electronic devices you're familiar with. Semiconductors can be doped with materials containing extra electrons, or with materials that are electron deficient, to control the direction of electron flow through the material. Semiconductors have also played a big role in developing solar energy capture devices. The amount of energy a semiconductor needs to absorb to release an electron such That electricity can flow can be finely tuned, allowing scientists to develop materials capable of storing solar energy from photons of light, in the form of electricity.
How do you measure conductivity of a solution?
Conductivity describes the ability of a solution to conduct an electric current. There are a few methods for measuring the conductivity of a solution, and the most straightforward to understand is probably the amperometric method. This method simply applies a voltage between two electrodes and measures the current. While this method is simple to describe, it can have complications in practice and it isn't always the most accurate method. Another way of measuring conductivity is with the potentiometric method, which makes use of two pairs of rings. There are two outer rings that apply an alternating voltage, and this results in a loop of current being generated in the solution. The other pair of rings sits inside the first and measures the change in voltage between the pairs of rings. This change in voltage is directly related to the magnitude of the current loop induced by the outer rings, which is in turn directly related to the conductivity of the solution. Other methods exist to measure conductivity, but these are probably the easiest to both describe and understand.
What happens in the frontal lobe?
The frontal lobe is responsible for decision-making processes and problem-solving as well as managing your active memory.
Why did Edwin Madison Macmillan and Glenn Theodore Seaborg, both United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For their discoveries in the chemistry of transuranium elements. All the way back in 1934, Fermi discovered that heavier elements could be created by bombarding heavy elements with neutrons. Macmillan was the first to succeed in demonstrating the existence of the transuranium elements, which are the heaviest elements on the periodic table. Seaborg expanded on this work, discovering a whole additional row of the heaviest elements on the periodic table.
Why did Robert F. Curl Jr., United States, Sir Harold W. Crotto, United Kingdom, and Richard E. Smalley, United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For their discovery of fullerenes. This Nobel Prize was awarded for the discovery of a new form of elemental carbon in which the atoms are arranged in a closed shell to form a ball. These three scientists worked together to make this discovery, and the resulting new form of carbon was known as a fullerene. Fullerenes are generated when carbon vapor, obtained by intense pulsed laser irradiation, condenses in the presence of an inert gas. Fullerenes of a variety of sizes are now known.
What is random error?
Random errors are variations that increase the standard deviation of a measurement randomly about its mean value. Since random errors should be distributed in a random fashion, both above and below the true value of the quantity being measured, taking repeated measurements can reduce their effect on the measured experimental value. Random errors could be caused by things like noise in an electrical circuit or random fluctuations in the temperature or humidity of the laboratory environment. Random errors are characterized by their Gaussian distribution of values about the mean measured value.
Why did Lars Onsager, United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For the discovery of the reciprocal relations bearing his name, which are fundamental for the thermodynamics of irreversible processes. Onsager received the prize for his brilliant mathematical work that allowed for a theoretical description of irreversible processes. He additionally made a large number of other contributions to physics and chemistry during his career, including developments surrounding the conductivity of solutions and flow of electrolytes, and a solution to the Ising model.
Why did Herbert A. Hauptmann and Jerome Karl, both United States, win the Nobel Prize for Chemistry?
For their outstanding achievements in developing direct methods for the determination of crystal structures. These two men won the prize for developing improved methods of analyzing crystal structure diffraction patterns to yield molecular structures. Their method was based on developing probabilistic equations relating the chemical structure to the observed diffraction patterns, and it relied on measuring many diffraction patterns to determine the molecular structure.
What is a fullerene?
A fullerene is any molecule made up of only carbon atoms that has a shape of a sphere, ellipsoid, a distorted sphere, or a tube. The name fullerene comes from Richard Buckminster Fuller, an architect who designed the geodesic dome. Spaceship Earth at Epcot Center is a geodesic dome. The U.S. Post Office recently commemorated Fuller and his geodesic dome on a stamp. Are just a few nanometers wide, but can be up to several millimeters long. The properties of this form of matter are almost unique in the world. and as a result carbon nanotubes have caught the attention of many chemists. Nanotubes conduct heat and electricity very well, but are also extremely strong, specifically in tests of tensile strength.
What is polymorph?
One of the crystalline forms of a substance that can crystallize in multiple forms.
What is titration?
The process of measuring the concentration of an analyte by reacting a second solution of known concentration to cause a reaction.
Why is there lime in my tortillas?
First, let's clarify the question. We're talking about traditional corn tortillas. And by lime we're referring to a calcium hydroxide solution, not the green fruit. Corn tortillas were historically made from what is called nixtamalized corn, which involves soaking corn in a basic solution like calcium hydroxide. The process goes back about 3,000 years to the Aztec and Mayan civilizations. Because of its ancient origin, how it was discovered isn't clear, but why it survived is now obvious. Corn lacks one of the essential vitamins required in human diets. It doesn't have niacin, also called vitamin B3. People who don't get enough niacin in their diet develop a disease known as pellagra. Just like if you lack vitamin C, you get scurvy, which has some awful symptoms. Obviously this is a problem if your civilization's staple food is corn. Somehow, the Aztec or Mayan people figured out that cooking corn with strong bases prevented people from getting pellagra. Now we know this is because niacin is not readily available in corn, but can be released by treatment with a strong base.
What is precipitation?
In chemistry, precipitation means something different from when the weather forecaster on the news predicts rain. A precipitate is a solid substance that does not dissolve in a solution. And precipitation describes the process of the precipitate forming. This generally takes place when one or more soluble reactants in a solution undergo a reaction to form one or more insoluble products. The result is that a solid substance will form in a solution, either depositing on the bottom of the container or sometimes floating around in the solution. Depending on the circumstances, precipitation can be a desirable or undesirable result.
What is fluorescence?
Fluorescence is a process by which molecules that have absorbed light can re-emit light to release some of the energy they absorbed. For fluorescence to take place, a molecule must first absorb a photon of light, which causes an electron to be excited to a higher energy level. At the same time, this process will typically also cause some vibrational excitations to take place. Some of the energy associated with this absorption will be given off through relaxation of the excited vibrational energy levels. For fluorescence to occur, the electronic excitation relaxes by emitting a photon of light. Some of the energy was dissipated as the vibrational energy levels relaxed. So the photon that is emitted has less energy than the photon that was initially absorbed. Remember that less energy means a lower frequency. So the photons that are emitted have a lower frequency than those that were absorbed.
What is a chemiluminescence?
Emission of light resulting from a chemical reaction.